The gentleman from Vermont is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to the Kasich budget amendment. I rise in opposition to the Democratic budget proposal, and I rise in opposition to the President's and the Republican Party's budget proposal. In my view, neither of the major budget proposals address the major crises facing this country in terms of the underfunding of education, in terms of the underfunding of nutritional programs, in terms of the underfunding of housing, in terms of the underfunding of environmental needs, and in terms of underfunding of a host of programs that have been sorely neglected during the last decade. In addition, in my view, neither of the major budget proposals addresses the very serious deficit crisis facing this country, and we are now looking at the largest deficit in the history of the United States this year, and there is no reason to believe that it will be better at all next year. Nor do either of the major budget proposals deal with the extremely unfair tax situation which exists in this country today, in which the wealthiest people in our country, who have become much wealthier over the last decade, are still able, under both budget proposals, to pay significantly less in taxes than they did 10 years ago, while the middle class and the poor are paying more. Nor, in my view, do either of the major budget proposals address the fact that finally the Cold War is over, and now we have an opportunity to significantly cut military spending, and yet neither proposal deals with that reality. Mr. Speaker, today in the Washington Post, the distinguished Congressman Leon Panetta, chairman of the Budget Committee, writes an article in which is headlined, "Our Budget is Better." And in fairness to Mr. Panetta, I agree with him. The Democratic budget is in fact better than the Republican budget. The Republican budget proposes a $25 billion cut in Medicare over a 5-year period on top of the $43 billion proposal passed by Congress and the President last year over a 5-year period. To cut back on Medicare and shift that burden to health care consumers all over this country when the cost of health care is now out of control is, to my mind, unconscionable. The Republican proposal, as I understand it, cuts back on veterans programs. Unconscionable. The Republican proposal talks about a reduction in capital gains tax for the rich when the rich, in fact, are enjoying huge tax breaks already. Unconscionable. Mr. Panetta, however, writes, representing the Democrats, that they are going to put $2 billion over the 1991 budget into education. But the fact of the matter is the $2 billion goes nowhere near far enough to addressing the enormous educational crises facing this country when 25% of our kids are dropping out of high school, when millions of young working-class kids cannot afford to go to college. I asked Mr. Panetta, I asked the Republicans, why is it in Western Europe, in Scandinavia, college education is the right of virtually all of their young people? Why can't the United States do the same? Mr. Panetta talks about a $350 million increase over 1991 in terms of Head Start. But we all know Head Start is a wonderful program. It is a cost-effective program. Why aren't we saying once and for all that every young child in this country, every kid, has the right to Head Start, has the right to decent child care? That should be our proposal. Mr. Panetta talks about increasing funding for WIC, several $100 million for that. A recent study came out which pointed out that 5 million children in the United States of America go hungry. We are not talking about the third world. We're talking about the United States of America. A budget proposal should come before this Congress which says that hunger for children, hunger for any American, is an absolute disgrace. We're going to wipe out hunger within a year. This is the United States of America. This is not a third world country, an underdeveloped country. So I say to Mr. Panetta, yes, Your program is, in fact, better than the Republican program, but it is not a very good program. And we in the Congress deserve a budget proposal which says let the wealthy start paying their fair share of taxes so that our children do not have to go hungry. Let us cut military spending so all of our people can enjoy a decent standard of living. I thank the gentlemen for their time.
Gentleman's time has expired.